Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. I spent a bit of time last night having a look at what the left wing are up to, just trying to understand their general positions on things. And boy, was it an insight into how bad things really are. We're all aware of echo chambers on the left, the centre and the right, and even within that, in the more niche dimensions, you have echo chambers. But that to me seems to have metastasized at this point to a completely different psychocultural reading of reality, to the extent where each of the different sides believe the other side has gone completely nuts. They're suffering from some form of psychosis. To exemplify what I mean, let's start with Keir Starmer. He's over a year now into his premiership, and we could say when it started terribly because Southport happened, which was obviously a tragedy. The public was reeling and a lot of pain, and he essentially threw the public under the bus, thereby destroying any goodwill he'd have. And since then, people have compared his response to the recent synagogue attack and when he feels Islam is under attack to Southport, and it's pretty clear he's sympathetic to certain minority communities, quote unquote, but when it comes to the general English public, he basically says shut up and take it on the chin, otherwise you're going to jail. Now, as I said at the time, I know many people said some silly things and I'm not in favour of the riots, but you have to remember the public were reeling at this point and he dealt with it terribly. If anything, he was just fanning the flames, and then he became famous for his crackdowns on social media, two-tier justice, and then he tried to push to the left economically, which didn't really work. So then he tried to embrace a more sort of rightist austerity type program, which again didn't work because he was so dour about the state of the country, and when he's already such a dull man, well, it just didn't play well. So then it was back to neoliberal economic orthodoxy, which really is the power behind the throne in this day and age. But in all of this mess, he tried to win back a lot of the heartland vote because he could see the Labour Party was hemorrhaging votes to reform. So he tried to talk tough on immigration, did absolutely nothing, and then said he regretted the speech. I mean, come on, Keir, I'd feel sympathetic for him if he didn't want to send me and people who think about the world in the way I do to a gulag. And then at the height of his unpopularity, he decided to force through digital ID, obviously taking orders from his globalist higher-ups there. But this all tells us that Keir Starmer is really nothing more than a walking corpse of a bygone Blairism, a pure robotic company man of globalist liberalism. Oh, and remember as well, recently he said he'd go to war with anybody who says that somebody who's not British can't be British. Remember, he doesn't have a favourite poem, he doesn't have a favourite book. The Starminator just does the job that his managers demand of him. But one thing that you wouldn't call the Starminator is far right. And on that note, here's Chris Packham. British viewers might be aware of this guy because he does the nature shows. Very good when he's talking about butterflies and trees and things like that. Not so good when he's talking to Owen Jones about politics.
This country voted in a party with a massive majority and a mandate for change. And all we've seen, I see a lot of the time, is them kowtowing to the far right. And this causes me enormous, concern because aside from being a student of natural history, I'm a student of history, and I know what happened in the middle of the last century.
It wasn't great.
It wasn't great, was it? And there are clear parallels between some of the processes that were undertaken by political parties and their manoeuvring at that point that I'm seeing now. And that without ambiguity is a fact. The playbook is very similar. And therefore, look, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, but I'm frightened, and I get more scared every single day.
Now, as I've said before, I'm 39 now and can't remember a single year in my adult life where leftists haven't said the present political situation is eerily similar to 1933. If you even have a slight move to the right, anything even mildly critical of mass immigration, it's dependable as the BBC saying the NHS is going to collapse over Christmas. But look, to give the devil his due, things really are changing, and there is very likely to be a shift, quote-unquote, rightwards. I say rightwards because I don't think it's going to be something that we presently understand. The reason why Chris Packham and so many liberals and leftists raise the spectre of the Nazi Party is really because it's part of their melodrama and narcissism. They love to paint themselves as the wise French resistance who saw the hate coming, don't you know? Now, the reason I believe something new is on the way, both in the UK and across the Western world, by the way, is because our present political ideologies just don't answer the modern challenges that we face. Just think about Packham's opening comments. The Labour Party were voted in via a massive majority with a mandate for change. The implication is they're extremely popular with the people, or at least were before they were elected. Yet the reality is that Starmer and the Labour Party only got in because they were the only thing left standing. The Tory party had lost all the goodwill of the public because they'd proven themselves to be neoliberals who are in the sway of the globalist power structure, as well as bowing to liberal left cultural orthodoxy when it was demanded. Further to that, Nigel Farage and Reform were just finding their feet, meaning they couldn't really form a credible opposition. This meant that a load of leftists and centrist dad idiots thought they'd just vote in Starmer and he'd be another Blair. But as I've said before, the Blairite project is now dying. It's over, it's done, and we can see it's gutting out the country. It's turning everything materially into a pound sterling sign, and culturally we're seeing our own country gutted out as the British people themselves increasingly become a detested minority in their own homeland. We're in such an absurd position now that even the statement that Britain is the homeland of the British people is seen as far right and extreme by the neoliberal mainstream, and they don't seem to realise by putting forward ideas like that, of course there's going to be a rise in the far right because you've made the average person extreme and far right just for being British. And this is what these leftist liberal lovies never seem to get. It was the Blairite cultural revolution that led to mass immigration on our own cultural and national dispossession. Nobody actually ever voted for that. And after that great revolution, these lefty lovies stand on the top of it and point the finger at people who never asked for it and would like things to go back to normal as extreme and evil. And then they have the fricking nerve to say they're concerned about the erosion of democracy after the massive cultural revolution they've enforced that nobody asked for. We should remember that that revolution stemmed from a power grab via the slow takeover of our institutions by liberal forces over decades. I've said before on the channel, the right made a great error there, a great sin. It got lost in the power and the trinkets and the gold of the market. The spiritual masters always warned, you get lost in the material world, you'll leave yourself vulnerable and you'll be eaten alive. That's exactly what happened. Well, the right got lost in the wonder of free markets and money and poo-pooed the importance of culture and spirituality. The left was planning and building a cultural revolution the size of a fricking tidal wave, and the only person we had there standing up against it was Roger Scruton, alone talking about the importance of aesthetics. God bless him. And before we knew it, the long march through the institutions was complete. They didn't even have to win democratically. They dominated the levers of power, both culturally and economically. Despite the woke era supposedly being over, it's still completely dominant in education and the arts. This is a still from a student of criminology. He took it and put it on the internet for a section on intersecting hate. And of course, hate is represented by Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage and Donald Trump. Now, the implicit moral coding with this that's indoctrinated into our youngsters, and remember, this has happened generation after generation now, is that those who challenge the liberal orthodoxy, even mildly, aren't just wrong. They don't just think differently about the world. They're morally and psychologically defective. And then these kids come out of university as brainwashed young adults and go into the creative industries and see it as their moral duty to undermine the sacred coordinates of Western culture, such has been done in the recent recreation of Amadeus, obviously about Mozart, where Mozart is, mixed race. In essence, they're trying to reimagine the past through a liberal frame in order to reimagine the present. And of course, if you oppose it, you are extreme and far right. So in essence, the fundamental problem is neoliberalism. That's the sort of centre-left to centre-right. But both the solutions the left and the right are offering aren't going to work either. Starting with the left, after my research last night, and to give them some credit, they do make some legitimate criticisms of the neoliberal system and how it's essentially got Britain, and well, every Western nation, in its grip at the moment. You can't really have a democratic system with such a structure. However, where the left fall down is their belief that all you need to do is increase equality, increase everyone's economic standing, and it will mean you have a more peaceful world where everyone holds hands and sings Kumbaya. The problem with this is no matter how spiritual or Christian a leftist may well say they are, leftism itself is a secular ideology rooted in trying to enforce material equality amongst people. As always, it sounds very nice in theory, but in reality it ignores the true nature of the human being, his kin, his homeland, his in-group preference, his religion, his tradition, his culture, his very being. It tries to eradicate these things as part of an atavistic hierarchical understanding of being. However, what it doesn't realise in its supposed noble pursuit of equality is it actually eradicates what really matters in life. It's savagely cruel and brutal. And this is why people across the Western world are moving to the right and why the left doesn't understand it. The left seems to think if it can just improve material equality and on top of that throw in some sort of multicultural utopian vision, it will fix everything. But it won't, because people are deeper than that and are feeling culturally and yes, even ethnically dispossessed. And they're called evil for feeling that way. And this is why people in Britain are looking to parties like Reform and why Americans look to Trump and the French look to Le Pen and so on and so on. However, the real tragedy here is Farage is only going to be able to answer one part of the puzzle too. While Farage will speak to issues such as immigration and cultural dispossession and get a lot of support for that, do note though he won't speak seriously about demographic change, probably knows that's too edgy for the liberal system, whether that's play for power or he's part of the liberal system is up to you. The core point is he will answer one part of the call, but when it comes to the neoliberal economics, well, he's just part of it. And to my mind, this is the biggest battle the right has in the future. Farage is a good representative of this because he's a boomer, he was raised in the Thatcherite era, he's loyal to Thatcherite ideas, and they were really ground in the battle between capitalism and communism or communism and socialism. And that means that Farage, like millions on the right, still believe that neoliberal economic policy is going to lead to the best outcomes for Western countries. Free markets equal free ideas equals liberty, private property, yada yada, we all know the rest of it. But younger people have a very different experience of the market. For them, it's been very difficult to get a good job. And if you get one, you might be replaced by Ahmed in Islamabad who'll work for 10th of the price. It's very hard to get on the housing ladder these days. The dating market is a complete mess, and you're seeing your own country essentially get turned inside out, and you feel like an alien in your own city. The reality is that neoliberal economic policy implies mass immigration. As Aram Bastani correctly points out here, Boris Johnson admitted it in a Telegraph interview recently, stating the Boris wave had to come in his view, because of wage growth, inflation. It was getting too high. So essentially, he enacted human quantitative easing. And here's Philip Pilkington laying down some harsh truths. When are British anti-migrationists going to figure it out? HM Treasury tells every PM that comes in that their choice is between continued migration and state bankruptcy. None dare resist. Without getting birth rates up, this is the fate of Britain, no matter who is PM. This is why every incoming PM betrays us every single time. It's not just their own actions, it's a feature of the very system itself. It's built in. The game is rigged, and younger people are having to watch the neoliberal boomer who've done very well out of the market speed off in their Mercedes convertible down to their second home in Cornwall for the weekend, saying, I don't care if you're black, pink, blue or green, if you can do the job at a competitive price, you're on the team. Now I'll see you on Tuesday for the squash match. It drives me mad, this. The country's going down the frickin' pan, and so many of us are still lost in this self-centered materialism. Is there anything that will aid us in taking our minds off the material world and show it a bit of loyalty to one another? But in some senses, I guess you can't blame them. They've grown up in an individualistic, materialistic, desacralized age where the most important thing you can have is status and chicky poos impressed by you. But look, my core point in this video is neither the left or the right can mount a serious challenge to the neoliberalism of the age. The right will just play back into the market, nothing will fundamentally change. The left will try and challenge the market, but it's such a confused mass of humanity within Western nations now, everybody will be squabbling. You'll have no united front at all, and well, the market, the neoliberal system will just dominate. And this is why I always say that in many ways you have to accept the chaos, because it's only in the chaos and the collapse that order can be reawakened. The wound is the way, in the language of Rumi. To my mind, what this isn't just another shift in ideology from left to right, or far right, as the leftist liberals see. In fact, even that is another facet of the liberal fever dream, believing everything outside of it is the far right. To my mind, it's going to be a wholesale change, or at least has to be, where we reimagine, re-understand what life is for, what Western culture is, what sort of world we want to live in, and how we make it stable. And yes, I do believe the only solution is on the Western-wide level. We're going to have to find a new form of unity to challenge neoliberalism wholesale. It's going to involve a spiritual repositioning and awakening, at least amongst the vanguard, to reroot ourselves in our tradition that can see us bear the storms of the age. If we don't do that, to my mind, it's almost certain that we'll perish. As always, these are my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. If you are interested in personal and spiritual transformation, the first step to a shift in the age, do check out my sister channel, The Sacred Way. You can also join the Substack if you want to support me or get exclusive content. Join the monthly calls and the rest of it. Other than that, do subscribe to this channel if you're new. Enjoy the rest of your day.